Hi guys, I wanted to show you a new package which arrived for me this morning. This box is from a new model shop which is launching this week called Scale Models HQ. Their website is online now, and their aim is to bring to the UK market modelling products, accessories and so on which normally haven't been available here. So the owner of Scale Models HQ contacted me a few weeks ago and he asked if he could send me some things to take a look at on the channel. And he also said that viewers of my channel could receive a 10% discount by using the code MN10, NM for Model Nerd, 10 at checkout. So let's take a look inside the box. I've removed the tape, but I genuinely haven't looked in here yet. Okay, so the first thing we've got is this white box here. What's this? European Brick House Foam and Laser Cut Wood Kit. Okay, that looks interesting. I'm not sure what the brand or the scale is yet. We'll have a look in here in a minute. Let's have a look at this envelope as well first. Okay, so we've got a few things in here. What's this? Okay, so we've got a few tools in here by the looks of it. SMHQ, so obviously the company's logo. Okay, so what have we got here? We've got some 3D printed water bottles. We've got on the left hand side a metal seam scraper. And then we've got two metal painting stencils. Let's have a closer look at those. Okay, so this first item is a bit of a multi-purpose tool. So it's mainly a seam scraper. So we can see on the bottom edge there we've got what figure, 54mm, 75, 88 and so on. The purpose of that is to take your gun barrel, plastic gun barrel, put the two halves together, find the right size on the tool there, and then run this tool down the barrel, I think, in order to remove those seams. I'm sure if you've ever tried to remove seams by sanding or scraping with a hobby knife, it's quite easy to get flat spots on a gun barrel seam, unless you're very careful. So I think the aim of this tool there is to preserve that curve of the gun barrel while still removing the seam. And on the top there we've got ship, airplane 32 and airplane 48. So they look like they're for different sizes of, well, aircraft, ships and so on. I think the 32 and the 48 is kind of irrelevant. It depends really on the size of your aircraft, doesn't it? Different aircraft have different size fuselages. But it looks like that could be applied there to an aircraft just like you could apply it to a gun barrel. It's an interesting idea. We can also see at the tip of this tool here these holes. It's labelled handles bending hole. So I'm assuming that's for people who like to make their own grab handles out of metal wire, and you can use that to help yourself get those curves. And presumably if you put the wire through two adjacent holes, that gives you a certain length of grab handle, and obviously if you space those out a little bit further, then you get a longer grab handle. That's quite a cool little tool. Next time I make an armour kit, which should be fairly soon, we'll have to use this tool and see how it performs. Okay, let's look at this next product. And this says in the bottom corner, Wall Stain 4. So it's a photo etch stencil, and as the name suggests, it's designed to help create weathering effects, stain effects on walls, presumably for buildings and so on. However, of course, you could use it for a number of things, and there's no reason, for example, that you couldn't use it on, say, an olive drab tank to give some weathering effects there with some lighter shades of olive drab and so on. And basically the idea is that you put the stencil either on the model or slightly above the model, and then you airbrush through a different shade of paint to the base paint, and the stencil gives you a sort of patchy worn effect. And it's basically an alternative to things like the hairspray technique or the salt chipping technique or the sponge chipping technique. And then let's look at this final one. This one is also a stencil. This one is called a coating damage stencil. So in a similar vein to the other stencil, you could choose an appropriate shape here, and you can see we've got some sort of at the top there like dripping down sort of style stains. They could be used, I guess, with anything from oil to dirt. You could invert them and make them sort of green, sort of creeping up a building from the bottom. They could even be blood stains, I guess, from on the wall from like a zombie diorama, something like that. On the second row there, we've got a couple more sort of general stencils on the third one as well, just like patches in different shapes. That fourth row down there has edges and corners, so that's quite useful perhaps for getting sort of grime in the corners of buildings, at the tops of walls, maybe in recesses on vehicles and so on. And then finally some slightly bigger stencils on the bottom for bigger areas of damage or discoloration. So that's quite a variation there in terms of the things you can do. So that's quite interesting. Okay, and then the final item in this envelope was these 3D printed water bottles, 24 of them. These are modern style plastic bottles, so they're great for modern dioramas. And on each one of these little sprues, if you want to call them that, you have got a number of intact bottles and a number of crushed bottles. Plus we have this small bag here which has some labels. Some of them are in English, some of them look like they're in Mandarin. And of course you could use these bottles as they are, or you could give them a coat of clear paint, like a light clear blue colour. You could even give them a coat of something like black to represent like a bottle of Coke or something. So that's quite handy. I think those kind of small details do make things stand out. I'm thinking right now back to my zombie diorama which I made a while ago, and how perhaps having a couple of those sort of crushed bottles in the street as litter, or a couple for the survivor that I had in there, would look quite nice. Equally, I can see a few of these in a crate or just scattered around on the outside of a modern AFV, for example, and that would really just bring that extra amount of realism to it. Okay, right, let's look inside this big white box then. This is a European brick house, foam and laser cut wood. It's got a reference there, CJ0211. I believe this is from Core Models, although it doesn't actually say so on the box. It doesn't say what the scale is in the box either, so let's have a look inside. Okay, sure enough it contains foam and wood. Okay, it looks like we've got the wall pieces in this foam. When they say foam, it's kind of an XPS style foam. And at least some of those have got bricks pre-carved into them. And then we've got a lot of wooden pieces, laser cut wood, which look like they are for things like door frames and I think the roof as well. Okay, so these pieces here are clearly roof tiles, and more roof tiles. Oh, that's quite an interesting piece. That looks like the end of a roof section with lots of batons and supports and stuff in there. That's quite cool. Some pieces here that look like struts and so on and supports for roofing. Aha, here look like some doors. Yep, door frames, doors, etc. Windows perhaps. Okay, this long piece of foam here has some bricks at the top. Actually, they've broken off slightly in packaging, but that should be easy to fix. And then plain foam lower down. A couple of pieces here cut out, so that looks like a window, I'm guessing. Maybe a window frame. And obviously a big wall there with 4 windows cut out of it. And then a wall section here with a very narrow door there, and then some pre-cut bricks at the top, and giving the effect that some plaster has sort of peeled off away from those bricks. That's quite interesting. Okay, let's look at the instructions. Okay, so we've got these 3 photocopied sheets. This one seems to show us how to put the walls together. This one covers the roof. I'm not quite sure what order these sheets go in. There's no numbers for the steps. Then this final one has a few more windows on it. And then on the other side, there's a little like a window set into the roof by the looks of it. Okay. And there's a picture of what it should look like on the right hand side when it's built, I think. Although only from that direction. So not the clearest instructions in the world, but we can work with them. Okay, right, let me get this sorted out. Let me get my workspace cleared, and then we're going to have a go at building this kit. And while I take a break to get those things sorted, let me take a moment to say thank you so much to all of my Patreon supporters. These guys contribute to the channel every single month, and their support is greatly appreciated. In return, they get various benefits, including work in progress pictures and updates before anybody else. So if you're interested in the Patreon scheme, you can find a link in the description below. Okay, and here I am half an hour later. I think I've got a good idea now of at least the order to follow the instructions in. They're not numbered, but it would make sense to start with the walls here. So let's have a look and see how these things go together. So the first step is that the pieces need to be removed from the, well, it's not really a sprue, is it, but they need to be removed. So this foam piece here for the wall needs cutting out. Because they're already mainly cut, there's just a few little nibs on each side keeping them in place. That's nice and easy with a sharp knife. And the laser cut wooden parts, the same thing as well. On most of these there's just a small connection point or two. You do have to be a bit careful of these. I just tried one off camera, and it's quite easy to break the wood or the part itself, because it is quite thin and quite flimsy. Some of these wooden sheets were cut better than others. As you can see here on the other side, the laser cutting hasn't gone all the way through. On other ones it had, so you just need to double check that, flip it over, have a look, and make sure the cut's nice and clear. You can use something like a steel ruler to help you. Okay, so we've got the parts prepped, so let's see how they go together. As I'm doing this, I am doing it quite blind, because there isn't really a picture of the final product anywhere on the packaging. There is a small picture on the box, but I don't think that's the one we're building. I think that might be just like a generic company logo or something. Still, modelling is about experimentation and creativity, so let's see what we can produce. So looking at the height of that door, this is clearly a 1/35th scale kit. Although that's not really wide enough to be a 1/35th scale door. That's a very narrow door. And you can see the foam is lightly carved to give a guideline to where these pieces go. There's this curious sort of half door on the right hand side. I'm honestly not sure what that's for. This piece here confused me at first until I realised that the very thin strips in the middle are just carrier. We can cut those off and throw them away or put them to the side. The main piece we're interested in here is the one with the bricks at the top. So here off camera I've started to tape a few of these walls together, tried to get an idea of how the overall building should look. So here are the two walls with the windows and doors in them. This back wall here is made of 3 parts put together, and there's a chimney that goes in there as well. Then finally we have this blank wall here with this curious overhang on the right hand side. And future me is going to take over for a moment now. On this tall wall section here, I thought that maybe that should be cut down to the same level as those 2 side walls, so I removed the top part of that wall. That made perfect sense to me at the time, that all the other 3 walls would be the same height. Turns out I was wrong, but luckily I kept that spare piece of foam, so no big deal on that one. I'll point out later on in the steps where I put it back in. This is the chimney piece, and the brick pattern on the side piece here interlocks nicely with that main piece. That's the finished chimney stack. You can see on the corners the bricks tend to have been damaged slightly, I think, in the production process. So we'd have to do something maybe to either damage the other bricks around so the damage doesn't look so strange, or to maybe fill them up with some, I don't know, some filler or some putty or something. Okay, and here is the basic structure with the walls pinned together. I haven't glued it yet because I'm not quite sure what to do. The kit itself is a decent basic kit, but I feel like it's very much a canvas for future work and modifications. And one of the things I'm thinking about is the fact that it's clearly got 2 floors, but there's no interior. And it would be a little bit of a waste if I just left it completely empty, and it would look unrealistic as well. I could fill the inside with rubble, but then it would be a bit strange that the walls are intact but the inside is full of rubble. And even then we'd need to make maybe a first floor or something like that. So in this video I'm just going to make the foam building here. I'm going to move on to the roof in a moment, and then I'm going to have a think about what I want to do with this building. I'm going to build it fully, paint it and weather it in another video. So moving on to those wooden pieces, I've decided to start with this window here because it looks like the easiest of all the laser cut wood pieces. Just like before, I cut them out with a knife. The majority of this window is just stacking pieces of increasingly small size to give the impression of depth. Here I chose super glue to stick the wood together. I know you could use wood glue or PVA glue, but in my opinion that takes a bit too long to dry, and with these fairly simple shapes like this, a bit of gel super glue is the way to go, I think. At this point I haven't cleaned up those top edges. Once all the pieces are down, then I will give them a sand and it would make sure they're all flush. The roof for this section is made from a number of these small joists. These are extremely hard to cut out of the wood without damaging them. Overall I've damaged 3 out of 6 I think. But they do have nice notches in them to help you line them up. I think these wooden panels with the pre-cut slats should look quite nice once they're painted. I can see a good opportunity there to paint them in a wood colour, and then to use some hairspray chipping to take a top colour back down to that wood. Here's the finished window. I should also note that we don't get anything to simulate glass, but we can use the cartons from all kinds of different food packaging to do that. Okay, and now on to the slightly more confusing bit, the roof. I will admit that I did pause the filming for a good amount of time trying to work out exactly what goes on here. It turns out, actually with hindsight, that the roof isn't that difficult to make. It's just the instructions are not very clear. And you can see here that I've annotated exactly how many we need of each of these beams. So for example, it says there in the bottom left corner, D18, and it has an arrow pointing to 2 separate beams. That's a bit annoying because it implies there are 2 of them when in actual fact there are 4 of them. And that happens all over the instructions as well. Luckily the numbers are correct, so what I generally did is just count across in the picture and see how many I need of each type. The other good thing to remember is that the C pieces are the horizontal pieces and the D pieces are the vertical pieces. So as long as you remember that, you hopefully, in theory, can't go too far wrong. And essentially these beams go up like so. You can see the notches in the top of the wall where they're supposed to sit. The only caveat being that there are shorter beams at the end where the chimney is, and shorter beams in the middle where the window is. What I found easiest was to cut all of the pieces away from the tree, group them together and label them correctly, and that would hopefully reduce any mistakes during the process. The other thing that I'm still unclear about at this stage is this gable end piece here, closest to us, which according to the instructions is entirely smooth, it has no notches in it, and the horizontal beams have no notches in them to connect to it either, so it should be smooth. But there doesn't appear to be a piece like that on the sprue. You can see that piece is sort of labelled D1 in the top right there, but there is definitely no roof piece like that without notches in it. So we'll see what happens. Basically I will start at the back end, put the correct number of pieces in, and see how we end up at the front end. And then also see what pieces are left over and therefore what pieces are supposed to be there. So I'll speed the video up for this section because of course you don't want to see this in real time. But essentially I started with those two shorter beams there for the chimney and built my way up from there. I'm using super glue here again because I want that quick bond. There were no real problems with the fit here. Each of those notches went into each other really well. And of course once you've got more than a couple in, it does tend to guide the future ones as well. Okay, and that is one side of the roof structure finished, almost. There were just a couple of small problems I came across. One is that this beam here above the window is supposed to go like this. But as you can see, it's a little too short. It doesn't go the entire way. I haven't broken it in the packaging, I'm not quite sure why it's done that. And then conversely, next to the window, these four beams here are all too long. And I've double checked that, I've triple checked it. The window is definitely in the right place, it definitely is the right width. These beams are just one section too long. But of course that's easy to fix by just cutting them down. Here we go, fitting the roof onto the foam. That's quite a nice fit. I built the other section of the roof up in a similar way. I didn't show it because it's virtually identical. And you can see here that these two roof sections go on like so. And then we have that wooden batten section to fill the space. It's this point here when I realised that I did need that piece of foam that I cut off the top of the wall earlier. Oops. So what I will do is attach that again. That won't be too hard to attach. What I will probably do is attach the two pieces with some cocktail sticks and then do the seam with some glue. Here you can see the roof tile sections. There's lots of these provided. It does seem that you will need to cut at least some of them to the appropriate length. Now because of the way these are cut, as in they're not all the same shape and size, I'm guessing this is going to lend itself more to something like a slate roof rather than a tiled roof, because tiles tend to be uniform width, whereas maybe am I right in thinking that slate is not? No, maybe I'm talking nonsense there. I don't know. But anyway, the fact that these are not a uniform width and vary quite a lot is a bit of an issue. I'm quite tempted to make my own tiles. The other thing I'm thinking is that the model has gone out of its way to provide all of these battens and supports vertically and horizontally. It would be a big shame if we just covered the roof completely. So I'm thinking about what I can do to this in terms of damage. I'm also thinking, because this is a 3-story structure, we've got the 2 main floors and the attic floor, and we've got that really nice front end to it as well with some clear gaps in it. We really need to use the vertical aspect of the building. It would be a bit of a waste if we just had a vehicle driving past the building. That wouldn't seem to be a particularly good use of what this building could offer. At the moment I'm thinking a variety of things. I'm thinking possibly like an aid station, for example. We can have some people resting, some soldiers resting and recovering in there. I'm also thinking that ceiling would be great for observation or for snipers. Okay, so I think I'm going to call it a day there, guys. That's how that building builds up. I'm going to finish this kit in another video. Despite the issues, mainly with the instructions, I really enjoyed making this kit. It's clearly not a kit that you can build and expect to be perfect straight out of the box. It's not sort of the Tamiya equivalent of a building kit. I would view it very much as a canvas onto which you can add your own creativity. And actually I quite like that. I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking this roof really needs to be exposed somehow. I feel like I need to do some bomb damage to the rest of the building perhaps. I'm going to put perhaps a floor in there as well, I think. I'm also thinking that the walls, which are supposed to represent plaster, don't have a lot of texture at the moment, so I might go over that with some some actual plaster or some tile grout or something similar, and basically just use it as a base for modifications and expanding. I think if you're the kind of person who would like to do some scratch building, but you don't want to do it from absolute scratch, then a kit like this could be quite nice, could be quite a good way of getting that sort of skeleton going, and then letting your creativity run free. At the very least, it would be an absolute pain to make the roofing sections here yourself, so you get that in the kit. So guys, look forward to a future video where we'll make some modifications to this. And then I will also use those stencils, those damage and wear stencils that were supplied to me to do the painting of this as well. And just a reminder that this kit and the stencils were supplied to me by Scale Models HQ. They've just started up. Check out their website. And remember, if you use the code MN10 for Model Nerd 10, you'll get yourself a 10% discount. Okay guys, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.